I'm Robert Lilligren. I am the president and CEO of Little Earth of United Tribes in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I am a member of the White Earth Band of Ojibwe. So I grew up in the rural part of the metropolitan area here, and interestingly, our closest next door neighbors were Anishinaabe as well. But when I graduated from high school out in Blaine, Minnesota in 1978, the district or some organization within the school district held a little event, a little feast for the Native students I was graduating with. And this is 1978. And I sat with maybe 7 other students from my class. Some of them I had gone to school with from kindergarten all the way through graduation. And I never knew they were Native, and they never knew I was Native. And I just contrast that with today when we're teaching young students traditional ways, traditional language, to take pride in their heritage. And so I think kind of where I landed generationally through my lifetime, things like the foundation of the American Indian movement happened, a huge movement to reclaim the culture. So growing up, I didn't have a lot of culture around me, a lot of Native culture. When my grandma or my old aunts would get together, they would speak a little Ojibwe, but I think they grew up during a time when they were taught that that wasn't a good thing to be Indian. It wasn't a good thing to speak Ojibwe. It wasn't a good thing to practice Native traditions, and so those had to go underground for a while. And I remember when the Freedom of Religion Act happened in 1978. I think it was the same year I graduated from high school, and the march across the country. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing. My dad, who is an elder now, was really active in reclaiming language, reclaiming culture. He would grow tobacco at home for use in ceremonies, and he would go to some of my older relatives to get some cultural information, and he would ask my Uncle Bob, I remember, some questions about our family and things, and my uncle could answer questions to a certain point in his childhood, but when you bump up against his English school experience, he couldn't go before that. And to me, that was always a symbol of how effective that training was at quelling culture within people, of prohibiting language. Even in his latest years, my uncle had trouble remembering some of the important cultural or traditional language of his childhood. Before coming here to Little Earth, I was on the Minneapolis City Council for 12 years, and I was the first tribal member that had ever been elected to public office here in the city of Minneapolis. I would note that today there now have been 4 Indian people elected to public offices, and I say that because that's progress, and I think we should mark it and celebrate it. When I got into this position of leadership, and I got to tell you, I came from a background where I think most people thought the last thing I would ever do would be enter politics and enter government. But when I came into this position of leadership and used all my tools available to be effective, I really started to notice that it was the parts of me that are the most Indian that contributed the greatest to my success. Care and consideration for the whole of the community over the individual. The idea of resolving things through a circle conversation and through consensus over just dictating what the response would be. The care of the earth, the air, the environment, and that was something that I carried with me from my activist days. And these things that I might not have identified as being sort of Native aspects of my character and of my worldview, which when I really needed them to be effective were there and were very strong. And I remember the day I was first sworn into office. I first got elected in 2001. I went in to fill a vacancy, so I got sworn into office very quickly. And my family came down, my mom and my dad and a few others from my family, a couple of my siblings, and then a few people who had helped on my campaign. It was just a small swearing-in ceremony. But in my office beforehand, my dad gave me my eagle feather that I still have here with me, and then I kept within my office in City Hall. And it was a wonderful expression of our culture and of achievement. And earlier in my life, in my sort of neighborhood revitalization role, I had used my resources to pick up and move a building to my block that was going to be torn down. And it was a big day for me. I was a fairly young man, and it was a huge capacity builder to do that. And my father brought tobacco and said a traditional prayer where we were bringing the house to. And I really had a sense at that time that he was going to present me with an eagle feather. And he didn't. And I see now that he was waiting. He set the bar higher there. That wasn't enough. He wanted me to achieve more before I did that. So I brought the eagle feather in. My first day here, I brought sage in, and we smudged a group of the residents here. We smudged the office. And so I try to incorporate practices as much as possible. We start meetings in a good way with some words or some spiritual comments from an elder in a lot of the places where I sit in different boards and different meetings. Just today, I was with a group called the Metro Urban Indian Directors, MUD, and we started our meeting in a good way with, I don't know if he was the oldest person present, but he stood up and started our meeting. So in traditional ways, I have friends in the community who teach me and mentor me some of the traditional spiritual ways, singing to the water as well, and I find a lot of satisfaction in that. It's, I think, important. I've been in this job at Little Earth for a week now, and on Monday, the community, the residents here, held a feast to welcome me, and I thought just doing that was very traditional and very respectful. And we had a resident that offered Dakota prayer, and we had a singer as well. And as he referenced, and as I think is very important, the room was full of kids, full of them. And I think it's so important for young people, children, to see that and to have that as a regular part of their life, so that they grow with the expectation that these traditional practices will be part of their lives. So this is in protest to the name of the Washington football team, and there is a strong demand, not just from the Native community, but from the broader community, that this racist name be changed. And so a local Native woman designed this button, and I think that it says it clearly that this is a racist name and a racist symbol, and it's not welcome within the Native community. There have been a number of events, and there are a number of events coming here in Minneapolis when the Washington football team is here to play, to protest this name, and I will be participating in those activities. What I find really gratifying living here in the city of Minneapolis is that our city government has gone on record asking, demanding that this name be changed. Our county government is now on record demanding that this name be changed. And I think that shows that here we have broad support and understanding from not just the Native community, but from the outside community as well. So I ran for city council back in 2001. I was very active in my community, and I think this was a part of my Native culture and background, concern for the whole community. And the area that I live in here in the Phillips area in Minneapolis had become very violent and crime-ridden due to crack cocaine arriving on the scene. 2 people were shot dead on my block. There was an active drug dealing and prostitution trade right in the corner of my community. And I knew from meeting my neighbors that there were over 40 kids living in this few block area that I lived in, but you never saw them playing outside. It was too dangerous. And I thought that was really sad. And so I started to take action and meet my neighbors and do what I now recognize as organizing. I didn't know that's what it was back then. Organizing neighbors, identifying partners, resources, and really helping to take ownership of our little corner of Phillips and our little corner of the world. And as I did that, I got more engaged and more involved in the community until I came to a point where I was active on 8 different community level boards, councils, commissions, and I realized that I could have something to contribute to the broader community by being on city council. And my real motivation for running at first was to have a public platform to make points about some key decisions that were coming down the pipeline that were going to affect my community, and I did not have full confidence in the quality of the decisions that were going to be made by the people in positions of leadership in City Hall. And much to, I think, my surprise, and I think to the surprise of other people, I got elected. And it was really through expanding my ability to organize. I really knew nothing about politics, nothing about campaigning, but I knew how to organize. And I recognized that a campaign is really an organizing initiative. And so successfully parlayed my experience as a grassroots community organizer into a 12-year, 3-term stint on the Minneapolis City Council, where I was vice president of the City Council for all of those 12 years. And I remember during my first term, under my urging, the city held a summit with a number of different communities of color, traditionally disenfranchised communities, including the Native community here in Minneapolis. So through our civil rights department in the city, we had a large summit. And a woman that I had never met before came up to me at this summit and said, "You're Robert Lilligren, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "You're on the city council." She said, "I watch you on the city council. I watch you with my kids." And so I said, "Oh, thanks," and it always amazed me how many people actually watch these city council and committee meetings. And she said, yeah, my kids like seeing you up there. And so I asked about her kids. She had a son and a daughter. I asked how they were doing in school. She said the daughter was doing really well, no worries. She was on a post-secondary track for sure. And then she got kind of somber in this, what I thought of as a very Native American way. And she kind of got somber for a second. And she said, "My son, he's struggling more." She said, "He has a harder time with school." But then she lit up again, I thought, in a very, very Indian way. And she lit up right away. And she said, "But he really likes seeing you up there. He really likes seeing you up there." And I thought, wow, that's important to the community. And then shortly after that, I met with a group of young Native leaders from the Southwest who were here talking about economic development. And I was greeting them as a local dignitary and a fellow Native person. And during one of the breaks, these young men came up to me and they said, "So you're on the city council, right?" And I said, "Yeah." "And you're vice president, right?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "How did you ever do that?" And I said, "Well, first thing," I said, I don't think most people knew I was Native when I was first running," and they laughed. And I said, "But I was out there as a Native candidate." And they said, "We don't even have people like you in our community." They said, "We don't even have people ready to take office like that." And I looked at them and I said, "You have people. You just have to identify them and support them to get in." And my thought was, it's probably these guys right here that are those people who will end up in public office. But it really reinforced for me the importance of being able to see yourself up there. See yourself as part of the power structure, and then learning to bring others into that. And when I talk about there now being other Native Americans who have succeeded in running for public office here, that has been a very strong value of mine, and I'm proud to have helped develop some of these candidates to run for office successfully here.